Thank you for joining us for round 3 coverage here at Grand Prix Atlanta. I'm Brian David Marshall, joined in the booth by two-time Pro Tour top 8 competitor Eduardo Sajkovic. And we are watching James Clark on Mardu Pyromancer, and he's playing Daniel the Quad Wong. He is playing Daniel Wong here. Daniel is known for this Taking Turns deck. He is also known for his quad-sleeved approach to this deck. He has 4, carefully chosen sleeves that interlock, and there you see he's keeping his 1 card face down. There's a Inquisition of Kozilek leading things off there for James Clark.
I wonder
if
the
Serum Visions.
I wonder if the red sleeves are to match the red splash decision, since I've seen Daniel play, I believe, the black and white versions of the deck, and the red version for Lightning Bolt is kind of a newer take. I haven't really seen much of it, but I think with Daniel went with the Field Full of Humans, just playing Lightning Bolt main deck and then sideboard Abrade, Anger of the Gods.
Okay.
Going for that approach.
So talk to us about what the Taking Turns deck does. It's pretty self-explanatory in terms of the name of the deck, but how does it do it?
Yeah, it's trying to basically cast the card, Time Walk. Well, Time Walk isn't quite legal anymore. It's been proven to be a little too good. So we're going to try with Time Warp, Temporal Mastery. Yeah, a little too good. Temporal Mastery kind of does a Time Walk impression if you're fortunate enough to miracle it. But yeah, we're going for Time Warp, Temporal Mastery, even something like Part to Waterveil. We're just trying to essentially combine these extra turn effects with a card like Jace the Mind Sculptor and Dictate of Kruphix, allowing you to draw extra cards every turn. And, when you're taking more turns, that's more cards, and essentially you're generating an advantage that way. Mikokoro, Center of the Sea there, is another way to generate extra cards during these extra turns. A
card, and there's a lot of cards in this deck that we don't see all the time, but another card that sort of functions similar to a Time Walk in this deck is Exhaustion.
Yeah, so Exhaustion, free mana to make sure opponent's permanents don't untap. I believe it's just lands and creatures. Yeah, there we go. Good choice. That Portal Free Kingdoms, that was a set.
Well, here's a Mardu a young Pyromancer.
Yeah, the Mardu is
the titular Pyromancer.
Yeah, so here Daniel deciding the thing is, extra cards are far more valuable for Daniel because with access to cards like Exhaustion, Giga Drowse, and Time Warp, you're essentially denying your opponent full turns. So them drawing an extra card that they can't deploy is in your advantage. But yeah, here Daniel couldn't draw the Exhaustion to get the extra time.
Then you see Daniel's like, I've only got 1 land left in my hand. I'm going to just pick it up.
Yeah, deciding to be generous with James. Obviously, James could have would note down the hand anyways.
Here's another young Pyromancer.
Yeah, no follow-up here. It is worth noting that with that extra mana, when Daniel gives James an extra card, a Lightning Bolt is very likely to come here. Now, I'm going to be interested to see how Daniel sequences this, since you could start with a Time Warp, but it is pretty much just an Explore. Like, Explore is 1 in a green, draw a card, play a land. Now, that might not look like the same card as take an extra turn, but when you're tapping 5 mana and just untapping them to move on, it's very similar. So, usually you want to do these Time Walk style effects, like gaining an extra turn with a Howling Mine, with a Dictate of Kruphix. Get extra cards. But the problem is James has access to the card Kolaghan's Command in the deck list. So something like a Howling Mine would have problems in that sense.
And interestingly, Daniel only runs 1 Howling Mine in his deck.
Yeah, it's like the 5th Dictate of Kruphix.
Yeah.
I love that Temporal Mastery on top. Daniel can set up a really nice sequence for a future turn. Daniel can also do with 6 mana, not in this case here, but maybe in the future, is go for a Mikokoro activation on James's turn, reveal Temporal Mastery, and then get the extra turn that way.
Very nice.
Yeah. So here we see a Giga Drowse to buy time. Essentially, I think Daniel is probably going for a sequence of Temporal Mastery plus... okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was the...
Terminate on? Oh, okay. Sorry. So James decided to terminate the Elemental token.
Okay.
With the mindset of filling the graveyard for a Bedlam Reveler.
Okay.
However, I probably would have Lightning Bolted first, gotten the token, and then bolted the token with Summoning Sickness for an extra point of damage. So I think James had really good recognition there to just put an extra instant in the graveyard for Bedlam Reveler. That was actually great. It was just a little bit of mis-sequencing there, but I think that recognition is already great.
Yeah, look at this sequencing. Sets up that Temporal Mastery with the Serum Visions, as you mentioned, miracles it, and then has the opportunity to cast Howling Mine and play Time Warp here. So this is, look at this. He is going about taking all the turns.
Yeah, Snapcaster Mage, Time Warp, draw more cards. Yeah.
So he's got another Temporal Mastery in hand.
Yeah, unfortunately, second card draw for the turn, so you're going to have to full
That's
price
okay.
it up.
That is okay.
Yeah, it's worth noting the reason Daniel runs Dictative Crewfix over more Howling Mines. Coil against Command is a thing, but it's also Howling Mine makes your opponent draw a card first, while Dictative Crewfix has Flash, so you get to draw the card first, which in a format like Modern, which doesn't have a ton of actual card advantage, is critical.
All right, so 2 cards again for Daniel Wong. And interestingly, no Nexus of Fate in the Taking Turns deck. That card's a little too expensive for what he's trying to do.
7 mana for Temporal Mastery is more like a fallback option than what you're looking for.
Because you have cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor, and you could put those Temporal Masteries on top of your deck.
That's one interaction. Oh, Commandeer. That's a sweet card. Yeah, I mean, unlike the name suggesting a Commander card, it's actually from Cold Snap, the part of the Super Pitch spells. So you can pitch two blue cards to play Commandeer for free, and it doesn't just counter a non-creature spell; it takes control of it. I think it's non-creature. I might be wrong on that side of things, but
yeah,
I haven't commented. Yes, gain control of an instant, or you gain control of target non-creature spells. Yep, that's right.
You may choose new targets for it.
Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't quite get a Bedlam Reveler, let's say.
But it does get, a Planeswalker.
That would be sweet. Okay, I'll play Jace the Mind Sculptor. Perfect. That sounds great to me. And there's only one kind of as a head. Like, it's not a card you can really play too many copies of. It kind of acts as a force of will with additional upside. You can also play Dictative Crewfix on your upkeep to get that extra card, which you see Daniel Wong here do. The Flash makes it far, far better than Howling Mine, even if it costs an extra mana.
And we saw the Dreadbore taking down the Jace the Mind Sculpture. It was several turns ago at this point.
Yeah. Ooh, I love this interaction. Howling Mine is a card that was designed from Alpha. So we're going to see it die probably here unless Daniel decides to Cryptic, if that card is something that he has access to. But here, Daniel's plan was to... Okay, discarding Commandeer. Daniel's plan was to tap the Howling Mine because it only works if it's untapped. So it would have denied James an extra card.
The old mono artifact. I mean, poly artifacts that...
Yeah, the poly artifacts that shut down when untapping. I think my least favorite one of those is Stasis Orb. that was a miss.
Or Winter Orb, or continuous. Wait, were they called continuous artifacts? I don't even.
You know more than I do.
Don't remember.
Stuff. This is way before my time.
I don't have time to keep that stuff around in my brain.
At least it wasn't like Stasis. If you ever want fun Magic, don't read Stasis.
Oh man, I loved Stasis.
Don't go near it.
I mean, Stasis actually feels very similar to this deck, except that your opponent gets to do more.
Well,
when you're playing against it.
At least Daniel is tapping the equivalent of 40+ mana during this operation. Stasis was... Oh, my. It was something else. But here, Daniel is like just working on plan.
So here's the question. How will Daniel win?
That's not relevant. Snapcaster Mage attacks for 2 a turn. Totally fine. How will Daniel win?
Especially when he's taking all those turns.
Yeah. You can get to go Bolt, Snap, Bolt down the line if that helps with your curve. Snapcaster, Temporal Mastery.
Look at this. Temporal Mastery on top of the library.
Yeah. We're just drawing a ton of cards. And Daniel's kind of forced anyways to do the Temporal Mastery. Can't really keep it for later with those 2 Dictates of Crewfix.
Wow. This is just
Let's see.
clinic in how this deck works.
Let's see. James is at 16. Bolt would be 13. Snap Bolt down to 10. Then you have Snapcaster. That's down to 6, so another time walk effect would. So we're not quite there, but there's 2 lightning bolts, so that would be it's quite close actually. You were asking how to win, and I am counting it, but if you start with bolt here, then my assumption is that this is going to be lethal damage. Oh, with exhaustion, yeah, it's probably lethal damage here.
So bolt, Snapcaster, bolt you.
Yeah, down to 10. We have another. Yeah, normally you would just draw the extra card first, just in case. But if Daniel's doing this sequence, then I believe the game's probably locked up. We get an extra turn, so this is 2 attacks coming. So James is virtually at 2. So any Snapcaster Mage, any Lightning Bolt does it. Yeah, this is good enough.
Bolt you twice, so there you go. That's how he wins. Snapcaster Mages and Lightning Bolts.
I mean, the Lightning Bolts are more like for control. They make the game quicker, but you don't really need them. But yeah, here, this matchup, I mean, we're already going game 2.
Yeah, we were a little bit time-walked on that game, and so we weren't able to show you an advantage bar, but it would have been firmly buried on Daniel's side of the table almost that entire game.
Yeah, Daniel, was under no pressure and just took over.
He had the mana advantage, the turns advantage.
The card, everything,
yeah,
everything. Yeah, like here you're going to see James Clark lose some of those terminates. Dreadbore will probably still stay for Jace, but lose some of say Blood Moon. Not exactly great against this deck. But anything that's removal based will probably come out, and you're going to see more Collective Brutality discard. Maybe the extra Dreadbore, although I'm not a big fan. The Goblin Rabble Master is great though. Campbell, Console of Allocation, pretty good when your opponent's casting only instants and sorceries. Nihil Spellbomb's okay. It just can't trip. Surgical Extraction's okay. Wear Tear is also a card you would want. On Daniel Wong's side, I think the coolest card we could see is that package of Free Thing in the Ice and Awoken Ore and Guilds of Ravnica All-Star Crackling Drake.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's I mean, because you can see situations where he very easily sets up Crackling Drake Time Warp. It's like the more expensive Maximized Velocity.
That's one way to look at it. Oh, Thoughtseize too? Sure.
So Thoughtseize and Inquisition.
Yeah, if you leave Lightning Bolt, then James just doesn't have a Young Pyromancer in hand. Anyways, James would have gone Young Pyromancer into Inquisition / Thoughtseize rather than going for this double discard line. And yeah, here, Dictative Crucifix and Time War, definitely the cards to take. You want to stop Daniel from getting that key card velocity going, and then you're leaving Daniel stranded with a Lightning Bolt, which is only good against Young Pyromancer, and the Temporal Mastery, which is not exactly at the stage of the game you wanted.
And again, Daniel plays with his hand face up here.
Actually, now that I think about it, I think that James would keep Lightning Bolt over Dreadbore. It's very unlikely that Daniel pluses to avoid Lightning Bolt, since it's a card that you would sometimes remove. But yeah, you see the Dreadboard in James's graveyard, just in case Daniel decided to plus.
All right, now Collective Brutality.
Yeah, it seems like James has a Young Pyromancer in hand, either from before or drawn, so at this point you kind of have to lead off with the Brutality. Interestingly, though, takes the Time Walk effect rather than the Bolt. I think there's time to get that Temporal Mastery out of Daniel's hand. It's not coming until at least turn 5 with a Jace top deck. Wow, you got to be an optimist, right? Also, when you're playing these discard spell decks, it's important to always remember what your opponent could draw, because you can easily deal with their hand, but when the game goes long, you know they're going to draw active spells. I mean, if they don't, then you win, so it's easy. So you just assume they're going to draw active cards. So you're planning for the long game. Okay, what are they likely to draw? What am I worried about? And here, James just doesn't want a Jace to run over the game by going say Brainstorm, then Jace gets to untap Temporal Mastery, and then Daniel's back in the game. So James taking the Temporal Mastery probably with that line of thought.
All right. James plays a Bloodstained Mire, sacks it. He's going to go, we've had so much action back and forth here in terms of attacking the hand. It's still only turn 3.
I mean, it's modern. Turn 3 is late game.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. But
it's late or mid to late game.
It's fine. A matchup like this usually does go long, though. The Mardu Pyromancer deck isn't interested in winning Waterray.
And here goes Pyromancer,
Thoughtseize. This is not No. Like, this is why you take the lightning bolt. Like, why would we? James, we know that Daniel has lightning bolt. We need to get rid of that first. I know you don't get an elemental, but then we don't have a young Pyromancer. This elemental token is not exactly the quickest clock.
Now, again, if you're wondering about those face-up cards in front of Daniel, immediately that's his hand. He's been thought seized and inquisitioned and thought seized again, and so the cards that have been revealed to James, he's just being a good sport here.
Yeah.
And leaving those face up, you don't have to do that, but it actually gives him some benefit too.
Yeah, because you're playing the clock quicker. Wow, Campbell Console of Allocation. That's the card.
Wow.
But yeah.
Let's take a look at that card.
That is exactly what James needs to start having a lock on this game. Essentially meaning that Daniel is going to be under basically all of Daniel's cards to dig for time. Oh, well, there we go. And we're back to an even game.
Lightning Bolt, but the Lightning Bolt Lightning Helix is for your opponent too, or a little partial Helix.
Definitely do it though. Lightning Bolt voted by the community
Yes.
as the most popular Magic card of all time, most iconic, whatever you want to call it. It is the top Magic card as voted by the Magic Bracket community over 3 years of votes, and Lightning Bolt beats Birds of Paradise in the finals. That was a project. I remember seeing the start of that project, like voting for Magic cards until you get to the top card years ago. It's delightful to see it again.
All right, here we see James Clark is flashing back, Faithless Looting.
Yeah. Yeah. So here, discarding a not super relevant Inquisition, and it seems like another Faithless Looting. And you see the power of Faithless Looting in a deck like Mardu Pyromancer. It allows you to not flood in the late game, get towards those Bedlam Revelers, and take over. Here, Daniel Wong shipping the land, but keeping the Dictate of Krufix, since the Dictate is an extra card, but just for Daniel to start with. And hopefully using that to chain that Temporal Mastery that was drawn
into a handful of extra cards, yeah. And, of course, he left that Dictate on top of his library where James can't attack it.
Yeah. Ooh, Collective Brutality. Well, definitely taking Temporal Mastery here. But again, Daniel's not under pressure because it's an elemental and not a 2-1 plus another elemental from the Faithless Looting flashback from the Collective Brutality. Daniel's actually in okay shape. We're gonna play a Dictate of Krufix, draw that extra card.
Yeah.
Start going over the top potentially. I mean, these draws are really important for Daniel because if Daniel bricks here, then James also gets access to an extra card, and at this point, a Bedlam Reveler would make it wide open for James. So Daniel really needs these next two cards to be like a Time Walk effect, and then, yeah, Daniel's going to be far ahead.
So James flashes back another Faithless Looting, and then at the end of the turn, Daniel Wong brings in the Dictate of Krufix. Each player gets to draw an extra card now. But as you said, importantly, especially in Modern, Daniel Wong gets to do that first.
Land and Exhaustion. Kind of a Time Walk, except your opponent draws 2 cards. Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's kind of a Time Walk.
Kind of. But yeah, the thing is, James can't really do much here that would be of a concern to Daniel, since Daniel's hand is empty anyway, so it's not like a discard spell is going to help here.
And this is where the game can start to run away for Daniel, right? You know, you find one
Wear Tear.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, very important one of in the sideboard. It's a card that was kind of funny print in Dragon's Maze, because kind of everybody, when it was printed, knew that it would see play in Modern. But it's shocking how important it has been. Yeah, and Daniel deciding to play the land. Just in case James gets Liliana of the Veil and pluses. Having access to 9 mana means that Daniel can go Snapcaster Mage Temporal Mastery, for example.
A great job there with sideboard awareness from James Clark, bringing in that Wear Tear.
I mean, yeah, it's an important card when your opponent has 4 Dictate of Krufix. Surgical Extraction.
Oh, wow. Now I wonder what he's going to take.
That is a good question. It's a card you kind of want. I would be tempted by that Time Warp, I guess.
Just the cheapest, most efficient.
Also, there's free in the deck. You don't want your opponent to draw them. But the thing is, like, Surgical is like okay here. It's not really anything. Like, I like that Surgical allows you to know what your opponent's sideboard plan is, so it has more value in game 2. I think we saw that crackling. Yes!
Yeah.
Yes! Come on, Daniel, top deck. Also, it counts those time works in exile.
Yeah, that's true.
The problem with Crackling Drake in this matchup, as much as I like the idea, I mean, it does draw a card. So I like it anyways, but like if your opponent goes Liliana of the Veil, like, and you know, that's the problem with like these random creatures in these decks where Liliana of the Veil is good, is like Liliana can just go like, well, -2 and the creature's dead. But you get to draw a card, so it's not so bad.
Wow, but now James Clark's like, I like drawing cards too,
Big
but I
draw,
like
yeah.
it to be pretty one-sided.
Yeah, I think getting Time Walk there is correct, but that Surgical was going to be low impact. It's more like, I might as well use it before this Bedlam Reveler. Yeah, see the second Dreadbore. I do wonder if Lightning Bolt wouldn't be better than Dreadbore, but especially game 3, because Daniel has not seen a Lightning Bolt, so might assume that Jace is safe with a 0 ability. So I like in game 3, as weird as it sounds, to sideboard a bit differently and maybe not have Dreadbore for Lightning Bolt. But it depends how your opponent's going to play that Jace. If you think they're going to always plus the Jace, then it's not good. But usually they start by brainstorming, especially if they don't think there's a Lightning Bolt.
So one mystery card in Daniel Wong's hand.
Oh, it seems like James actually has a Lightning Bolt in hand too. So
wow.
Deciding to max up. Yeah, Lightning Bolt plus Kolaghan's is 5. So that's 10 damage. Daniel would go down to 1. Yeah, it's free +1 +1 +5, so that's 10. Daniel should be at 1. And yeah, now we have to draw off the top of the deck, and we're dead.
Yeah, sacks his own fetch land to kill himself.
Yeah, there Daniel had to like go Snapcaster into Temporal Mastery, into another Snapcaster, just to deal pressure.
Just looking at, seems like this deck in particular should probably give Daniel fits with the ability to just rip apart the hand in general. Yeah,
for sure, but at the same time, if Daniel can land a Dictate of Kruphix, there's only really that one Wear Tear to deal with it. And at that point, this card gets a little worse. Not much worse, because your opponent's drawing cards and has a lot of cheap spells. So this is not the best matchup for a Howling Mine Dictate of Kruphix style deck. I wouldn't be shocked if Daniel boarded out the Howling Mine just because Kolaghan's Command is in effect.
Right.
But yeah, I think here... let's see. I would probably stay closer to plan A. Crackling Drake sounds good until you realize your opponent has access to Dreadbore and Liliana of the Veil. So you really need, like, at that point, you're really going Drake plus Time Walk. But it does, again, draw a card, so. Yeah. Anything that draws a card is always great. Like, Elvish Visionary just sees so much play just because it has that magical draw card text.
One of my favorite cards of all time, yeah.
It's great.
See Daniel getting his daily exercise in as he shuffles his quad-sleeved deck.
Yeah, I didn't think about the calorie intake for shuffling the deck that large.
The last time we saw Daniel in the feature match area at a Modern GP, he only had 3 sleeves because there's the 4th sleeve in the sequence is very specific to be able to accommodate, you know, all that additional size on your cards. And so he wasn't able to get those. He was only able to triple sleeve last time.
Yeah, and of course you can't like use top loaders for the 5th, but that's
people used to do that, man.
I don't think you can because of the way it's shaped, but yeah, you gotta love the dedication, right? The deck is like, you know that this deck was collected over a lot of time with a lot of love and care.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we used to have a player who at Neutral Ground who had the hard cases, the screw down hard cases.
Oh wow!
And he had his vintage deck in those, and so it was like shuffling Baccarat or something. You know, it's like those James Bond casino chips.
Oh, those chips, yeah. One of the most unlikely stories for that one, at least.
All right. Daniel likes his hand here in Game 3, and we are underway. Scalding Tarn. And a Bloodstained Mire for James Clark. No first turn Inquisition / Thoughtseize.
Or Faithless Looting.
Or Faithless Looting, yeah.
So that's an interesting hand. I wonder what James kept, because there are not tons of hands in the Mardu Pyromancer deck that you would keep that don't have a 1-drop.
Do you feel like you can, especially in a matchup like this, more aggressively mulligan to like an Inquisition or Thoughtseize hand?
You definitely can to some degree, but even like a Faithless Looting to start going for your deck would be a big plus. Here, it's like, I'm just trying to think of this from Daniel's side. If my opponent doesn't have a turn 1 play, I feel like the hand they kept is not bad, but probably subpar. Which to me implies that if they kept it, either it was a loose keep, which could happen, but then it's a relatively easy-ish game, or more likely they have a very powerful card that they believe trumps the matchup. So something like a Liliana of the Veil, Campbell Console of Allocation. So if I was in Daniel's seat, I would worry about one of these cards coming down.
What does fetching a Sacred Foundry tell you about what that card might be?
It doesn't really tell me much.
Okay.
Since you just want to set up the white for a Lingering Souls.
All right, so there's Collective Brutality. Sees a hand, 2 Temporal Masteries, a Time Warp, and an Exhaustion.
Kind of strange to take the Temporal Mastery over the Time Warp here. This tells me that James has maybe a Surgical Extraction. This would be my biggest reasoning for taking a Temporal Mastery here, is combining a Surgical Extraction, but then I guess James would do that Surgical a little later to maximize the chances that Daniel is going to draw. And I can see the Surgical in James's hand. So I like this line of having the Surgical for later, since there's no rush. That Temporal Mastery isn't going anywhere.
All right, well, another Collective Brutality. Perhaps the big part of what he was thinking there. And now you see...
Yeah, only gets an instant or sorcery, so...
It cannot get the Dictated Crucifix that he just ripped off the top there. He does get that Time Warp, though, and now he's going to be able to Surgical those Time Warps.
Well, I think actually your plan, I guess, is to get Temporal Mastery still, since you're getting a card out of Daniel's hand. And I think this is a game that's shaping up where Daniel will get to 7 mana, unlike the previous one. Well, the previous one, Daniel did get to 7 mana eventually, but by that point, it was semi-irrelevant.
All right, Serum Visions was the play for Daniel Wong.
Top.
Top. Never a good feeling.
No.
And then Exhaustion.
Yeah, again, Daniel not seen many 1 mana plays. This makes sense.
Not a commonly played card. You know, you really don't see it much outside of this exact deck.
To be fair, you don't see Exhaustion out of a deck that wants to play Fair Magic. I've never seen someone cast that card going like, I'm trying to grind card advantage and value.
Maybe that's why I've played it a bunch.
Oh, yeah, you would have.
I need something a little less fair. Yeah, that card...
We all need to play less fair decks in Magic. I'm totally on board with that philosophy. My new philosophy...
Is there some sort of Reed Duke graph you could chart, fair deck to how unfair a deck you need in order to win?
So one side's Reed Duke. What's the other side? Matt Nass? Basically. Oh, yeah.
All right, 2 cards for James Clark.
Liliana of the Veil, top deck, so that Exhaustion. Keeping that off the table. Even with the extra card of turn, very important against a card like Liliana of the Veil, that would otherwise dominate the game, since it's very hard for these decks to be ahead on cards.
All right, there's Faithless Looting.
So yeah, even though Exhaustion was just tap 2 lands, it was pretty okay here. It stopped the Liliana coming down. It disrupted James's turn pretty heavily. Although it's very likely we're going to see James go for a Surgical. The other thing with keeping that Surgical is if Daniel top decks a Temporal Mastery with a Miracle trigger, you can Surgical Extraction.
Oh, wow.
Because
that's brutal.
Yeah, because it's still in the hand. So Daniel would have to reveal the card. Okay, well, that was great. But you still cast it anyways for Bedlam Reveler. But yeah, if Daniel reveals a Temporal Mastery, you can just Surgical it while it's in the hand before it gets cast, because there's 2 parts to the trigger. One is you say that it happens, and then you have to pay. But before you can pay, there's a little bit of time, and then you go like, no, I'm going to get your Temporal Mastery in the graveyard, the one you just revealed to the Miracle trigger, and also the one that happened to be in your hand. James has some time to fire off the Surgical. Doesn't need to fire it off until turn at 6. 7's risky if your opponent if Daniel top decks a Cryptic, though.
Looks like the players are having some discussion about whether or not everyone's drawn the appropriate number of cards for Dictative Crucifix.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be really hard to remember because both players have to draw an extra card. I've seen this happen a lot. By the way, we do have an advantage bar, and it hasn't moved. That is deliberate. If you're like coming in and you're like, wait, who's like winning here? And I'd like to know. The truth is this game is actually still pretty close.
Eduardo would also like to know, so he can use the advantage bar.
Oh, yeah, it's a great toy. Tool. Sorry. My apologies. But no. Like, the truth is the game is actually still really close. It comes down to a very clutch card on either side because Daniel doesn't really have any cards in hand. That Surgical Extraction is able to take that Temporal Mastery in the graveyard and in hand. So the game is really close here. It really is going to depend on, what is on the top of these players' decks. James has a ton of action. And if James can deploy that action, probably will be able to go ahead. Daniel's really looking for some of these unfair cards like Time Warp. And although Daniel's looking for a Temporal Mastery Miracle, that would be one of the worst possible things that could happen to Daniel.
And worth noting, Daniel has set up his top 2 draws of his deck with Serum Visions. He kept both cards on top.
Yeah, I couldn't quite picture those cards. I believe there was another Serum Visions, which you might as well keep with this amount of mana. And there was something else I couldn't see, but like probably a good effect.
So how big of an impact on Daniel's plan is this Surgical Extraction going to be?
Well, Daniel believes that there is access to a Temporal Mastery, which there isn't. Well, now Daniel knows.
All right, so Surgical Extraction is going to take the Temporal Mastery. Oh, he's going to take the Time Warps instead.
So this timing the Surgical here is nice because Daniel topped with Vision, so you're shuffling 2 cards. So that is additional value. But I kind of wanted to see the Temporal Mastery go. While Daniel can indeed draw a Time Warp, we're still going to get the 7 mana, and you're getting rid of a turn from Daniel's hand. The only rationale here for me would be that James top deck something like an Thoughtseize to get rid of that.
Or how about the
Mastery.
second Surgical Extraction? He has 2 in his sideboard.
I mean, yeah, that's totally fair, too. And then you're preventing Daniel from drawing cards. If there's a second Surgical, this is totally a fine line. I like firing off the Surgical here no matter what, though, even if the target is debatable, just because you're shuffling Daniel's top 2 cards, which Daniel topped. So that's right. I really like that James decided to, bide the time with the Surgical. There was no need to fire it off right away. Just wait until Daniel might draw more Temporal Masteries. Just wait until Daniel puts 2 cards on Serum Visions and get more value from a card that otherwise would be card disadvantage. Although, again, it was kind of here.
All right. You see, always.
That would have been so sick if Daniel had top deck Temporal Mastery. Yeah, we have Snapcaster Mage. Exhaustion.
Wow.
Yes.
Snapcaster Exhaustion. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty. That puts a wrinkle in James's plans.
So I got word from the floor. Players were just not sure if James had drawn his extra card off Dictate, which is what we thought it was. There's a little bit of a time extension here, so we see that 10 minutes.
Jace, the Mind Sculpture.
Oh wow, that's like pretty much the perfect card here for Daniel.
Well, there's a lot of great cards, but Cryptic Command is actually more important for Daniel at this point. James has not had the chance to fire off anything. So Daniel is going like, I need Cryptic to fight whatever's coming, but... oh, this is going to be funny.
James is going to start with Inquisition of Kozilek.
With Inquisition of bad news.
Kozilek's like, yeah, I've got bad news. We can't deal with any of this.
I'm trying to look at James's hand. If
there's a young Pyromancer.
There was a Collective Brutality and it's a Blackleaf Cliffs, I believe, so it would have been tapped. So yeah. James only had access to Form Mana anyways this turn, even after drawing all those cards. Oh, no, it was a Swamp. Because it's a Swamp, I kind of would have liked firing off with Thoughtseize rather than Inquisition here. I mean, your life total is low, but...
now he is going to Thoughtseize.
Yeah, but Thoughtseize is always going to work, whereas Inquisition isn't guaranteed. So you might as well start with a Thoughtseize if you're going to fire off that card anyways.
And now the Collective Brutality will not be able to... take the Jace.
Yeah. Okay. I guess this is okay because you have Bedlam Reveler. But like, yeah, I think the setup here, taking the time warps was maybe like taking that temporal mastery with a surgical extraction would have been really juicy.
All right, passes the turn back to Daniel Wong.
Yeah, hand decimated from one turn. Is that another exhaustion? Yes. So, oh my.
It's another exhaustion and a Snapcaster Mage.
No. We're Jason and exhausting.
Yeah.
That's got to be the line.
The Snapcaster Mage is
premium.
Is for later on down the line.
You want to know what's great? Jace becomes Time Walk with Snapcaster Mage. You just minus it, bounce Snapcaster Mage, and start Time Walking. I'm not sure about this line. I think Snapcaster Mage at 9 mana has more value, and Jace plus Exhaustions is really nice.
Oh, there's that Crackling Drake we've talked about.
Yeah.
It is on top of his library. Will he keep it there?
And it's important to know James has taken a ton of damage here. And just at 10. Wow, bottom both.
Plays his land, plays Exhaustion, says go. So 1 mana to work with for James, 1 land that he can play this turn.
Yeah, I really wanted to Jace plus Exhaustion this turn, but oh well.
All right.
But yeah, James is just at 10. It's been a lot of random damage adding on over time.
You've just described Modern.
That's a fair statement. Let's see, has either player hurt the other? No, this all looks like self-damage.
Right, and now James is down to 7 to get that from the fetch land and the shock land there.
It's a bit strange. I kind of would have preferred... Oh, you really need that white mana for Wear Tear. Yeah, I was wondering why there wasn't a mountain, but if you need that white mana, you need that white mana.
Oh, I think Daniel just also pushed a Dictate of Kruphix to the bottom of his...
That's fine. We have Lightning Bolt. We got new plan. New plan. We're going to 2 Snapcaster Beats is all we need. And we got 1 lockdown. Anytime walk is basically game. That's Serum Visions. Yeah, so we can attack. That's fine.
Wow. That's going to drop James to 5.
Yeah, so here, fetch. Well, it's kind of tough because Jace plus a 0 would be nice to filter your library. But if you fetch and draw into Temporal Mastery, you win the game on the spot. I think my tiebreaker is there's not many Temporal Masteries left.
Right.
But I like starting with Serum Visions just in case. So because of that, I think... And you don't have that many cards, so you don't really want to shuffle away with Jace yet. So I think I like Daniel's take here of fetching first, going for Serum Visions, and then probably playing Jace.
Looks like Daniel also did bring in the Thing in the Ice. I saw that on the bottom of his...
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. Like, Thing in the Ice is quite good against these decks. It acts as, like, an Anger of the Gods style effect plus sweeping the board. So it's bad against Liliana of the Veil, though. Very bad. Right. Oh,
Jace
yes, this is much better. I should have seen this line. This is much better. We're done. Lightning Bolt, Snap Bolt. This is a much better line. Yes, win the game now.
Snapcaster, Bolt you.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, should have spotted that.
Daniel Wong goes to 3-0 here with his quad sleeve taking turns deck, and James just helped him along the way there. You know, the Thought Seizes, the fetch lands, the shock lands, and put himself into range of just this classic combination of Bolt, Snap, Bolt.
Yeah, just you didn't need to deal more than 8 damage. That was it.
Pretty crazy. I'm sure we'll see more of James if he continues to do well. Yeah. We'll be back with more Magic right after this. Welcome back here for round 3 coverage of Grand Prix Atlanta. We've just been discussing the merits of Mission Briefing versus Snapcaster Mage, and I think when this new set came out, Guilds of Ravnica, a lot of people agreed, it's no Snapcaster Mage, but there's cases where it's better, and we might just see that down in the feature match area this round as we go down for the match between Michael Blythe and David Vo. We're going to pick up the action here in Game 2, and it is white-blue control versus blue-black mill. Michael Blythe's up a game here. Talk to me about this interaction between Mission Briefing and Archive Trap.
Right, so Archive Trap can be cast for 0 if your opponent has searched a library this turn. Let's say to get a land from their deck, randomly.
Just why would you even say that?
I don't know. Just lucky guess. But then, so you can cast it for 0, and then you mill 13 cards. That is, you put the top 13 cards in their graveyard of their library. Mission Briefing then allows you to essentially say that you can cast a card from your graveyard again after surveilling 2. But because it doesn't give flashback, it just says you can cast a card. So Archive Trap's text would still be, your opponent searched your library this turn, so you may cast this for 0. So you go like Archive Trap, Mission Briefing, Archive Trap, 26 cards. When you're playing mill, 26 cards is pretty sweet.
And now if you were doing that with Snapcaster Mage essentially gives the card flashback. You would have to pay the full casting cost of the Archive
Right,
Trap.
so 7.
Yeah.
That's not as interesting.
Not nearly as exciting.
By the way, I love Search for Iskanta against the mill deck. It's got a higher chance of flipping than usual.
Right. You do my work for me.
It's closer to Rampant Growth, but here David Vo, because David Vo is on white-blue control rather than, say, Jeskai, there's a lot less fetch lands, there's less searching of the library, so those Archive Traps might be stranded for a lot of the game, and if David Vo draws the right cards, maybe all of the game.
All right, here's Snapcaster Mage on Opt. Going to push the Snapcaster Mage.
Keeping in Fatal Push against the blue-white deck remains a surprise to me since, it can get a Celestial Colonnade.
I was just going to say, is that a nod to the Colonnade there?
Yeah, it's usually, you get the Snapcaster Mage here, but I guess you keep 1 or 2 just because of Celestial Colonnade. But maybe something like Ensnaring Bridge is just a little more effective.
Well, David Vo goes straight up here to Teferi.
Ooh, Teferi resolving is not good news. Okay.
He's just going to stick a Snapcaster Mage before David untaps. Does not choose to flashback Fatal Push.
Oh, I love the card that Michael Blythe drew in Visions of Beyond.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
It draws a card, but if there's 20 cards in a graveyard, it becomes good old Ancestral Recall.
Yeah, absolutely. That card's terrific.
What, Ancestral Recall? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we also have Bridge.
Oh.
I don't know if I like having both. I think 1 is more than sufficient. And Bridge, while Push is not really a card you want against white-blue control, but if you were going to choose, at least Ensnaring Bridge
interesting
kind of works for any of them.
Here we can see Telling Time from David Yo. A throwback to original Ravnica.
Yeah, Michael Blythe reading the card. Since, it was printed in Modern Masters too, but it hasn't really seen too much Modern play. It could have, though, but I think it's just kind of in this awkward spot where you prefer Opt. I guess David Vo is playing it just because it's an instant over the more traditional Serum Visions package.
So puts Path in his hand. I saw a blue instant go on top and something on the bottom. I think a land.
Yeah, the land probably went on bottom. Dispel.
It was Dispel.
Oh, yeah, Dispel's extremely good against this black-blue mill deck. Jace's signature spellbook spell there. Looks like Negate.
So, Flooded Strand from Yo.
That is a grip of counter magic. Exactly what you want with a Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. I found it weird how much removal are in these post-board mirror not mirror matches or pseudo mirrors, I guess, where creatures have very limited utility. Something like an island has high impact. The blue-black mill deck doesn't go that far on mana, so once you start getting to 6, that is a ton. But yeah, David Vo probably going to be careful about when cracking this Flooded Strand, since it might enable an Archive Trap. But with access to a Negate and a Dispel, may choose to fire it off.
And does Blythe have any of the tools to fight through that? This deck doesn't really run anything in the way of an Inquisition or a Thoughtseize.
Michael's sideboard is definitely not engineered to beat Control, which makes me believe that Michael wants just the main deck to win. But there's not much to push. I think like once David Vo gets to a situation like this, David's pretty much in firm control. There's not much that Michael can do to push through cards. Yeah.
All right, well, now we're going to see an Archive Trap, because that's the card Michael Blythe just drew. So David Vo is going to search his library. At least I think we're going to see it.
By the way, one of the interactions I like in Michael's deck is Academy Ruins with milling your own library, so you can get that Ensnaring Bridge and play more than 2 copies virtually.
All right, now here is Archive Trap. He gets to play it for free because David is searched.
You can start with a Dispel and Negate. The reason you would want to Negate is Dispel is much more mana efficient, but at this point you have a ton of mana anyways.
Oh, and here's Mission Briefing. This is exactly what we talked about.
Unfortunately,
but
sadly, Spell Snare is here to ruin the party.
Yeah, a bunch of people behind us just cheered for Mission Briefing, and then they all just went, "Aww."
Fair enough. We accept the crowd's the crowd's judgment.
Now a Cryptic Command, and David Vo seems firmly, firmly in control of this game.
This game is just over. Michael can't really push through anything. There's not a threat that Michael can do that would come even close to trying to win the game. So
doesn't have to worry about that Ensnaring Bridge.
Yeah, like whenever you want, you just Ultimate Teferi. Ensnaring Bridge is a non-card.
All right. Well, there's Visions of Beyond. He's just going to draw a card. Meanwhile, David's going to just paw at the top of his deck here. Finds himself a Jace the Mind Sculptor. If you thought Jace or Teferi were unfair, Jace and Teferi.
Yeah, much
super
better.
Unfair.
Yeah, and does the interaction that you see in Standard, right? Why is that in Standard?
What?
Teferi untapping to Scanta the Sunken Ruin. Why is that legal in Standard? What's wrong? It's insane. Obviously, you don't have the 1 mana efficient spells you do in Modern, so it's a little different. But then again, you don't get Jace the Mind Sculptor in Standard too. You know, it's all about the little things.
And here we go. We're going to see Jace come down, and he is going to attack the top of Michael Blythe's deck.
It's fine. There's many ways to. There are all the roads you want to roam.
Yep.
In Magic lore, is there are many roads to roam. Basically, there are many roads to Dominaria. Is that the take?
All right. There's that Academy Ruins you had mentioned earlier. Not really going to do anything here, but just a kind of cool card that's in his deck.
Yeah, that summarizes what's going on in this game.
All right. Well, we're just going to run out a naked Archive Trap here, and it's going to get negated, I believe.
Yep. And, I mean, we were done. We're done. We're getting more done. This game is... We're just waiting for Teferi's Emblem to close things out. And then, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Have you ever seen Teferi's Emblem with Jace Brainstorm?
No, I mean, that's what I was hoping we would get to see, but...
I mean, it would have gotten to that point.
Time is a factor here for Michael
Blythe. Did David Vo keep a 1-lander? It's a very good one. No, 2 lands at least. There's an Opt and a Field of Ruin. Okay. But that's a lot of cheap interaction, Spell Snare, Dispel. That hand is stacked.
It looks like he did mulligan to 6th, though.
Let's see. On the draw, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, that is correct. Would have 7 cards if had kept.
All right, there's Glimpse the Unthinkable. And
there goes those Search to Scannas that could have been problematic with that Glimpse.
And just mills the top 10 cards.
Yep. Field of Ruin, go. You could opt to try to get a blue source, but I'd rather just pass here and have Spell Snare up for another Glimpse.
All right, and there is Shelldock Isle card. Michael played last turn with time. We didn't talk about it, but once someone has 20 cards or less in their library, you can play the card under there for free.
Yeah.
And there's Glimpse number 2, and it does get a Spell Snare.
Yeah, Celestial Colonnade, great draw. You get to play your land drop. You're not forced to opt awkwardly. Mind Funeral, though, let's see. There's a negate in hand or not? This Mind Funeral actually would resolve.
Well, here's
This
Snapcaster.
Snap
Mage.
is... Let's see that hand. There's not another Spell Snare. There's 2 Dispels. This is just going to resolve, apparently. Yeah, I mean, you can opt, but there's not much you can get.
All right. Opt. Push.
Yeah, get another land.
10
Teferi.
more cards.
Teferi. Well, Teferi's in the graveyard are actually an issue for David because...
And I think he milled one in his first set of cards too.
No, those are the 2 in the deck. That's it. Teferi's
Oh
gone.
wow.
There's not really a way for David Vo to shuffle that graveyard back in. So those Teferis are just gone. Which is really key.
The old deck death.
Yeah. Fatal Push. Oh, my. The thing is, though, David Vo is definitely at 20 cards now. So something like a Visions from Beyond would be sweet.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Although David Vo is ready with many Dispels.
And Snapcaster for future dispels and. All right, so Opt is the play for David Vo at the end of the turn.
Plenty of time. You're not worried about the 2 damage that Snapcaster Mage is dealing every turn. So probably, let's see, David has in Surge, so we're probably going to see something like a Telling Time at end of turn. The shields being down is okay. Ooh, going for something like Feel the Ruin. I don't know.
Wow.
Well, not the planes, the the field, please.
So he's going for Field of Ruin on the Shelldock Isle. And then Michael Blythe is going for his Field of Ruin on the Celestial Colonnade.
Yeah. I mean, Michael doesn't have an Archive Trap in hand, but I don't think David Vo can play the Telling Time now, since that would be... Since if Michael, like, fires off an Archive Trap, David might be in trouble. At that point, you would have milled 30 free cards, which isn't even close, I guess. Let's see, it's 10 cards roughly with that opt and with those opts. And the natural draws plus 30 free would be 40 free. So you'd still be off. So I guess one Archive Trap would be okay.
Don't forget the strategic mulligan to 6.
I doubt that mulligan was strategic. I have sincere doubts. I kind of, yeah, just take it slow. You're not under any pressure.
There's a Mesmeric Orb.
Yeah, that's definitely something you can't let, like, that can't land. Start with Mind Funeral. I mean, Spell Snare will still get the orb, but there's no Spell Snare, so... that Logic Knot might as well just say Counterspell. Actually, there's an argument for David Vo to, like, overpower this Logic Knot so that the top deck Visions from Beyond would not draw Michael free cards.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. There is a line where that Mind Funeral can be cast, but there was a lot of lands gone, and there's a risk here. Yeah, I mean, I would have gone to like about 15 cards. Yeah, the Mesmeric Orb is...
Mesmeric Orb.
That is a real problem for David.
So whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller puts the top card of their library into their graveyard.
Yeah, and the Academy Runes is pretty good to prevent a loss that way. Yep, there we go. There's some cards. Mesmeric Orb is going to be a real problem for David Vo.
Nicely navigated by Michael Blythe to get that into play.
Yeah, David Vo was constrained on blue mana. I guess, how many islands are in the deck? 5? I don't know if like 4 of them were milled. That would be the reason that David got a plains rather than an island off one of the Field of Ruins.
And then you see Michael Blythe, again, that orb cuts both ways.
I think that's okay. I think Michael benefits more from the orb being in play than David does. Man, the spells have been very sad in David's hand. They've been like sitting there like, we want to do something here.
And you see the thin library of David Vo.
It's not going to get fuller. Yeah. I mean, it's possible. Yeah, that's what happened. So David would have definitely fetched a second island off the Field of Ruin. Fortunately, they were in the graveyard.
That's why you play the mill deck, Eduardo. To mill your opponent's colored mana sources.
There might be reasons to play the mill deck. I'm pretty sure that's not one of them.
No, I've heard people tell me many times over the years that's why they play it.
That's kind of a... yeah.
Yes.
No, don't justify playing the mill deck.
I'm not justifying
for competitive. Justify playing the mill deck because it's enjoyable and you want to have fun.
All right, here's a fatal push on that Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, no reason not to do this on upkeep, but
Yo's going to fight over it, and now 4 cards.
Yeah, the problem, Snapcaster Mage also mills you a card, and we have a lot of attacks to get in.
All right. Snapcaster Mage gets in for 1, but also is going to clock David Vo for 1 card when it untaps.
Mill the Archive Trap. That is kind of poetic.
Here is Snapcaster Mage.
Are we just flashing back Archive Trap? Actually, that's an interesting question.
Or do you see flash back Glimpse?
Yeah, well, okay. If you're trying to play around Snapcaster Mage, you know that your opponent could Spell Snare Snapcaster Mage. So you know they don't have Spell Snare if this Snapcaster Mage resolves. So then you're trying to figure if they have Spell Snare. They can't, so they can't have Snap. So then you're like, what could they have? And the answer is like either an unconditional counterspell or a Mana Leak or something, or Negate, which doesn't matter. But if they have that Dispel, then you definitely want to fire this off.
Okay,
so, yeah.
So here's the Glimpse. And David Vo is going to cast Telling Time.
This is going to be really tragic.
Gets a land.
Puts Cryptic on the bottom.
Puts Cryptic on the bottom.
Well, I think this is it. We're close. Mesmeric Orb is going to kill David.
Wow.
That's it.
Look
Michael's
at this.
got it.
Glimpse resolves.
Should have played Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn. Should have been ready.
Wow, and there's the hand. Michael Blythe, blue-black mill. Takes it down. Glimpse the unthinkable. You know, that's just the sorcery speed played around the instant.
Those dispels have been very sad, yeah.
Yeah, they just sat there in his hand.
Yeah.
So it was pretty insane. We saw Mission Briefing, not a card I was necessarily expecting to see get played in Modern this weekend.
Yeah, Pascal Maynard did write an article about like the cases where Mission Briefing would be better, and it's for those cards like Archive Trap. Well, maybe he didn't mention Archive Trap, but like Force of Will that have an alternative casting cost where having Flashback would be a drawback.
Interesting. All right, we've got more Magic coming up for you after this. All the players who had 3 buys, all the big pro names are going to be coming into the feature match area starting in round 4, and that's coming up right after this.